Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to SteamFeed Radio, SteamFeed TV. I do it every time. It's just what happens. SteamFeed TV, episode number 9. Tonight we're going to be talking about Twitter. Has it finally gone global and has been finally accepted as a mainstream? We're going to be talking about wearables. Is society ready for wearables? There's Google Glass. There's watches coming out of out of everywhere, and that's going to be interesting. We're also going to talk about, is social media dead? Or not dead, maybe has social media reached its peak? Because there's a lot going on in the social media space and the traffic that's involved. But before we go any further with any of that, it would be remiss of me to not mention the tragedies that are happening in the world today. Today, a passenger jet Malaysian flight MH17 was shot down with 293 people on board. Some of those people are Americans, and whether they're Americans or not, it doesn't matter. 295 people lost their lives, and there are families and people that are associated with those people that are now going through a tough time. So our hearts go out to them. And the other thing is, we have two authors in SteamFeed that are from Israel. And Israel is now embroiled in a really tough situation. So I wanted to make sure that people pay attention.
Jerry, they're in Israel.
They're in Israel.
They're in Israel.
They're in Israel, and they are dealing with this on a daily basis. So I want to make sure that people understand this is a tough situation, and our hearts go out to them. Our prayers are with everybody involved in these two situations. So I just wanted to make sure that we did not leave that alone and bring that up. All righty. So, panel, how are we tonight?
Fantastic.
All right.
We're doing great.
Let's go down and let Brooke introduce yourself.
Hello, Brooke Ballard, B Squared Media. Happy to be here in my empty room. Sorry for the background.
Jeff Howell, say hello.
I'm Jeff. I'm awesome. Hello.
Jennifer Kane, we're glad you made it.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Kane. That's
and
all.
Randy Bowden.
Randy Bowden.
All right. So, panel, the first thing we're going to be talking about tonight is something that I think is very interesting. While I sit here with my Google Glass on, and I will say that Google is now, I just was notified today that Glass 18.3 has been rocking. Google is now to the point where they are very close with this product. It is rocking and rolling. It's doing amazing things, and it is steady as can be. It's rock solid. And apparently this week, in the next few days, we will be rolling out from 18.3 to 19.1. So I'm really excited about that. But the question is, Google has them, Samsung has them, Apple is coming out with one. I want to get everybody's opinion on wearables, and let me give a quick insight into this. I have been told that Google came out with the wearable watch as a stepping stone to Google Glass, because going from the phone to Google Glass was a bit too far. So watches came out, and that's kind of a halfway step, so it's not such a big step. However, do you think, does the panel think that society on a whole, is the majority of the society is ready for wearables? Are you guys? What are your thoughts on that, folks?
No. I don't think so. I mean, I think about my parents and how technology lives in their world, and I can't see my mom or my dad or even my younger sister who was on the show using wearables. I think you have to kind of be like immersed in the tech world. It's for like the tech people, I feel like. It's not for the masses yet. That's my take.
Are you saying it's just reserved for the nerds?
Yeah. No, I mean, don't get me wrong. I think it'd be cool if the masses would adopt it, but I just don't think it's for the masses yet.
I tend to agree with Brooke. I just don't think. I think it's there. It's going to be there in the future. I mean, it's going to be part of our lives as they enhance these things. It's just like anything else. I don't, just because they come out with a watch that it allows you to do whatever with it, that the majority of the public's going to jump on it. It's like, take Facebook, for example. Facebook hit the market, and there was a niche, and then it started to grow, and took a few years to happen. How old is Glass, Jerry? I mean, it's only been out, what, 2 years.
Not even. I've had
Not even 2 years. I mean, I just think there's a lull there that's going to happen. Now, will it be integrated in a minority market? Over time, it will, and eventually become something that's just there. So, I agree. It's a geek or it's a tech type thing that really propels it right now.
And I'll wait for Jen and Jeff to weigh in completely before I pose another add-on to this.
Well, Randy, in the green room, you were just talking about that you were going to live forever. So these wearables and all this technology would help you do that, don't you think?
But see, I don't have the embedded lens in my eye like Jerry does. So I might live forever, but nobody's going to know it. Jerry could be all over the interweb.
You'll see the view from inside the coffin, in other words. Jennifer?
I'm going to disagree with the whole panel on this one, and I think part of that is perspective. So I'm a disabled person, and I have a lot of chronic medical conditions. So I'm interested in wearable tech from the medical and health standpoint. So I think you're all thinking about like, oh, I can tweet off my watch, or I can live stream something I'm watching. And what I'm really seeing a lot of development in is wearable tech to monitor health. And I think that is absolutely going to be used by aging baby boomers who are going to need to be able to collect health data if they have diabetes or they have any sort of other chronic conditions that they need to be monitoring. If they have access to these tools, these are digitally savvy people, and this enables them, when you go to see your doctor, that doctor gets in that 15 minutes 1% of your time and data. And if you have the ability to take in a huge data set to fill in the 99% in order to increase the amount of treatment that they can give you, I think that can be really revolutionary. So for instance, I'm on an early list for a prototype for a device that's going to monitor my posture. So I have degenerative discs in my neck, and if they continue to degenerate, I will need an extensive $100,000 surgery to replace that. So for me, to know that if I'm typing and I'm kind of doing this or my head's moving, to have a device that says, sit upright, Jennifer, because I can tell you're slouching, is invaluable to me. And I'm kind of your representative old person on the panel in this respect.
Well,
okay, so all of our arguments.
That's a great point, Jennifer. But there again, that's a niche, and
But Randy, I think that's more. I think Jennifer brings up a point that wearables. What I've seen with glass, by far, the largest sector that is glomming onto glass and finding the use for glass is the medical sector. And now there's a new one, which kind of, think about this. There's a new app that just came out that they're using in Israel. This is amazing to me. When rockets are launched into Israel, there's an app that's connected in with the Israeli defense system that Israelis can use either on their phone or Google Glass, and it notifies you that rockets have been launched. That to me is amazing. But I think and that's just a portion. So I think wearables in maybe some certain areas, like that, volatile areas, might be a little bit more open and applicable. But I think Jennifer brings up a really good point in that the medical field is really finding the uses for wearables, whether it be watch, Google Glass, or not.
I think. Speaking of medical, I think it's a phenomenal thing that a surgeon in an operating room has a product that maybe not only records, but I mean they're doing that now, but is able to record and instantaneously get data back to him about a patient and about a procedure during the procedure. I mean, that is there, but I still say that that's a niche. You ask about the overall market, and I still stand by, yes. I mean, you got Jennifer who is a person who sees a fit there. That's a unique fit. Not that, I mean, I'm a baby boomer, I'm getting old, and I hope I don't have to have a device that tells me that to sit up straight. I sympathize with Jen on that, but It wouldn't be bad to have a device that says, Randy, you need to do this. I mean, I agree with that.
And so let me ask you this.
There's also a device that they're layering into helmets for kids' sporting events so that they can monitor if kids are getting concussions. Again, that's the general public that they're marketing that to. It's coming from the med sector, so you're right, Randy. I'm not talking mass market, but from the med sector, I think you're getting into multiple demographics to talk about multiple injuries and illnesses, and combined, taken together, I think that could be huge.
And
I agree with that.
It's one of those situations where we're looking at when people start seeing what it can do for their quality of life, that's when it's going to get interesting. And I think Randy has a point in that the average Joe is going to look at this as, like you said, Jen, is it going to be something that I can get my email on, where you're looking at it as, can it improve the quality of my life? So I think that you both have really good points. I guess, Jeff, see, because we're kind of at an age level where Jeff and Brooke are being kind of quiet because they're pretty young yet.
They're like, health problems, whatever. It hurts to get up in the morning. Let's put it that way.
Any thoughts, Jeff and Brooke?
I think it's not for the masses yet, and by masses I mean mass market. And I think everybody kind of agreed with that, even if they disagreed for specific markets. So I stand by that. I think it's so cool, and I would love for it to take off, but unless it's a need, like a need to have versus a want to have, as Jen was explaining in the medical market, it could be like a need to have device. Then yeah. But other than that, it's a want to have, and I want to have a lot of things, but I don't. So.
I mean, here's a comparison to think about. Years ago, you would go to Disney World or Disneyland, and you would get in line, and you would stand there forever, and then they came up with this new thing, okay? These products that they developed are for niches that help or speed services that are applicable for that individual thing. So wearable tech, unless it's going to make a person, go through life in an easier way, Jen has an issue, okay, and it's going to help her. That unless they're not really seeing it as something that they want to strap on their body for. I'm not saying that it's not going to happen. I said early on that I think it's coming and it's going to be ingrained in us.
It's inevitable.
I don't think.
Yeah,
I saw a video recently of this wearable tech that's embedded in the fabric of clothing, which I thought was fascinating. But then the application is so myopic.
What is that for?
So there's two different applications.
Before we go any further, I'd like to hear Jeff's thoughts on this whole subject.
Dude, I don't know.
Apparently, that's not the answer I was looking for.
Yeah, I don't know. Like there was a movie that Bruce Willis did a few years ago called Surrogate, where it was basically all about these robots, these droids that looked identical to the person. You'd strap yourself into this bed, and you'd spend your whole day, with this thing around your head and controlling this surrogate around that looked identical to you, but it was, you couldn't get sick, and you could do all kinds of cool stuff, and you could be superhuman and whatever. I don't care. I mean, maybe that's just a.
Can we all agree that?
I just don't know. I don't. When I think of wearable tech, I'm just like, who cares? I mean, because it's not. I don't think for me it's going to add any quality of life to me. I've got a phone. I've got a computer. I've got, what do I need an Apple phone or a iWatch for? I don't need it. I don't care.
But I think, okay, let's put it this way, and we're going to move on to another subject. But I think can we all agree that it is the inevitable of the future? This is where we're going.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure that it's a watch or a glass, but yes,
right.
I agree with that.
Right. It's going to progress from the smartphone, correct?
The clothing thing is kind of intriguing. I have to get with Jennifer on that later. I want to.
I'll send you the video. It's fast.
Let me switch subjects because that that could be maybe a green room after the show.
Yeah, okay. Could involve underwear or something like that. I don't know.
Let me switch subjects.
There is a product for that. There is a product for that, I will say.
Hot damn.
Twitter over the World Cup. I was amazed when I looked at the stats about Twitter over the World Cup, and I think one of the things that comes up a lot is a lot of people talk about, as we all know, I don't even involve myself in Twitter because Twitter is too hard to understand. I don't get it. So it's never really been able to get mainstream, other than what you were saying, Brooke, kind of the techie people that are involved in social media and really enjoy it. A lot of people, I would think the vast majority of people that actively use Twitter, there are a lot of people who have accounts but never use it. I think, are basically people that are geeks, tech geeks, and I have no problem with that. But what was amazing was during the World Cup, there were a total of 672 million tweets over the course of the World Cup. Now, you're talking, I think it was, 12, 14 days, a bunch. I mean, you're talking a lot. But the amount of tweets that were going on, like, the difference was it was global. It wasn't just the Super Bowl. This is global. And for a time there, during the Germany and Brazil match, they were getting 35.6 million tweets per minute. And there's a lot of talk about, has this taken Twitter to the mainstream? So I want to get everybody's opinion on that.
I'd like to weigh in and say that Twitter's already mainstream, and it doesn't matter whether it's global or in the United States, in our nation. I mean, Twitter played a big part in electing our current president.
Good point.
Twitter plays a big part in a lot of sporting activities. The passion that occurred in the recent soccer championship was because the United States, I mean, that's been going on every 4 years, right? Twitter played a part in it 4 years ago. The United States just happened to put up a team that kind of elevated us, and we got interested in it on this continent, more so than ever before. It's growing sport. A lot of sporting events right now use that type of communication, but the current thing that you started you started the topic of the day in the show with, about the current tragedies that are happening around the globe. Most of our news source comes off of Twitter. It is already mainstream.
I will admit that I had kind of an awakening when I was watching the most recent cycle of America's Next Top Model. Yes, I'm going to admit that publicly. And what was interesting to me, I've watched this show before in the past, and there's a panel of judges, and they judge the top model. And the most recent season, the fourth judge is social media. And they rank up the person's social scores, and that is determining if that person goes on to the next round. And for me, it was a little sad because they reduced everything I do to, like, your scores are way down, Brian. You're not going to advance. And I was like, oh, that's all my job is your scores are down. But it was interesting to me because that's the show that's very popular among a lot of people, and for them, that's completely normal for them. So it's a very mainstream sort of application. So I think it is mainstream already.
Yeah, I agree. And I'll put it out there at the risk of getting like hate mail, but I just really don't care about soccer. Sorry. But yeah, I think the reason why it got so many tweets and all that is because of what Randy and Jerry both said. It was a global event. There were so many different groups of people and ethnicities involved, and the U.S. put up a good team, and I think having the U.S. behind it with having a large U.S. population on Twitter helped kind of amplify things, especially from our perspective.
So you think that because the Americans actually played a role in, a bigger role and actually went further, and there are so many Americans on Twitter that's interesting.
Well, Jerry, think about it. I mean, the news medias were pushing the American teams left and right. Think about it. I mean, they were talking about people taking off work and all that. I mean, if we hadn't have been there, you wouldn't have had that press pushing that.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff, jump on it.
Twitter, yes. Soccer, no.
I think soccer is gaining, though. I'm not a fan, but I think it is gaining.
I don't care. Like, I mean, listen. Yeah, I don't care. I mean,
But modeling, that's important.
oh yeah, that's hugely important.
That's a global event right there, Jen. That's global for years. I'm with you
But
on that.
I have to agree with Jeff in that I'm not a soccer fan, and there were times where I was like, and I put a couple of tweets out and a couple of things out. You know, I guess I'm not an American because I really don't care. I don't find the sport to be interesting in any way, shape, or form. But you can't argue with, you know.
It's a culture thing. It's a culture thing,
Twitter
right?
But Twitter is so much more. However, I think the people that Twitter is so much more to are the people that use Twitter. I don't know that Twitter is growing. I think people that love Twitter, I'm not sure. That's something maybe we can talk about on a future show. Is Twitter active users growing, or, you know, where is that at? Because it's great for news.
Yeah, and not necessarily news, sporting events, or anything. I think it's one of the best. It's always been my favorite platform because.
But is it where the non-geek goes? Is it where the average Joe goes to find his news, or is he still picking up his morning paper?
No, I think so. I think the average Joe is. I mean, maybe I don't know. I think the average Joe.
I don't agree. I don't agree with the average Joe going there or the average millennial going there. I don't think it's a big platform for that. I think it's a bigger platform to funnel the news of the day, the instantaneous look at this just happened. It's an immediate thing that can happen. And those people that pick it up, you know, it populates out to Huffington Post or the Wall Street Journal or Washington Post, and then that story comes out. I think that's how that works.
Good point.
Yeah, but I still think the average Joe that might read Huffington or Washington Post is going to get it in their feed regardless.
Yeah, but
So
they might
maybe,
not.
maybe
I
they
guess
get
what
it.
I'm saying, Jeff, is they might not have, like Jerry said earlier, they might not be on Twitter. But what they read on Huffington Post that populated at this moment for 5 minutes ago came to that writer from a Twitter feed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you know, it's interesting. Alex's father was in town, and he's Greek. He came here when he was, I think, 16 or so, and he's really into news and politics. And I asked him, you know, have you ever considered getting on Twitter? Because he's like always on his iPad or watching the TV, and he said, oh, I don't do that. So why would I do that stuff? And I'm like, well, you know, you just sat here and had like an hour-long conversation with me about how you follow all the news and all of the politics, and if you're really that big of a news junkie, you could join Twitter solely for getting news that you want purposes, and you would get it before it hit any of these sites that you're waiting for on TV, minus the commercials, you know, whatever. So I just think, again, like, certain people or the average Joe doesn't understand the value of some social media sites. Maybe others, but I used to say like a blanket statement, say all social media sites, but I don't think the average Joe views social media as, you know, important, more than fluff right now.
Yeah, it's hard to communicate to him to say, look, you can hashtag NBC or CNN or Fox or whatever your, you know, BBC or whatever, and follow an instant story. You know, you can hashtag Gaza Strip and see the news flash. It's hard to comprehend that to most people.
And so many different opinions. It's not right, it's not left, it's everything and in between, and stuff you never thought you'd hear or see.
Yeah,
you know, which to me is cool, because I mean, that's how I like to
raw. It's raw,
Yeah.
which is very cool. That's what you like. It's raw.
Yeah.
All right, so let's finish up with something a little bit different. One of the things that I've noticed, and that I want to know what your opinions are. Summertime, we all know that social media takes a break. I'll say that, a break. A lot of people take some time off. There's a lot of talk about digital detox these days. You know, people tuning out. I know my generation, we were supposed to tune out, you know, and do the whole thing. But now I'm finding, don't be laughing at me, Jen. But one of the things that I've noticed is I'm seeing a lot of people not completely dropping off of the radar, but spending a lot less time on social media sites. And I'm curious, has social media, what's your opinion, has social media reached its peak? And I'll leave that interpretation of social media reached its peak to each of the panelists. And we have 5 minutes.
Plateaued, maybe, for a time.
So do you think this is a summer thing, or is this something that people are just starting to say, you know what, I'm tired of social media, I want to actually talk to somebody?
I think so.
I think first place, this is what I would ask for I answer that question. What do you mean by social media?
Facebook, Twitter, all the things that we communicate on.
So
On a social,
me talking to my daughter via Facebook and communicating with her, or talking to Jerry via Facebook, still
But you're one who
exists.
spent a lot less time online lately.
And not necessarily on a personal basis.
Okay. So is there a difference between the personal and business?
Well, it's marketing or social media. It's social or marketing. I mean, it's
So which one have you backed off of, marketing or personal?
Marketing, probably. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about that then. Have businesses decided to back off of marketing? Have you folks who do this for a living backed off of your marketing and spent more time with your families?
No. In fact, I've had an influx of requests for proposals. We just closed a new book of business. We are busier than we have been. So I don't see it that way, but I'll flip it and tell you that on a personal level, I've started taking a digital detox on the weekends where I don't even get my phone off the charger because I need to come down off of the whole social media thing and recharge. Yeah.
I think that goes back to what you said, Jerry, early on about the geeks or the people that live here. I mean, I think there is a saturation or a burnout period where you go, hey, what am I missing?
Yeah. Jeff?
Well, my last post was about quitting Facebook, and one of the points that I made in that post was sometimes we have put social in place of having that human interaction where we'd rather go on Facebook or Twitter or Google Plus or Pinterest to engage or interact with people that are even in our own community. So I think there's some people who are willing to just say, you know what, like what Brooke does over the weekend, let's put the phone away, or if we're going to pick up the phone, we're actually going to text somebody and say, hey, let's get together tonight for dinner wherever. And I think there is a trend towards that a little bit where people are willing to not spend as much time, get back to that kind of personal face-to-face human interaction and get that face-to-face time, and then come back on digital whenever, later in the day or later in the week or later in the weekend. But I don't know, I personally see that there's a trend where I don't think social media has hit a peak, but I think that people are learning to have balance between their digital interaction and their human interaction. And I think that's something that is happening.
Jen, why don't you close? I agree. That's a good term, balance. And why don't you close us out, Jen?
Well, I don't think that you're going to see people that are burnt out on seeing updates about what their friends and family are doing. I think we're burnt out because we're seeing marketers marketing themselves. And I'm burnt out on that. I was burnt out on that like 4 years ago. I'm kind of over that. And it's a little sad when you're seeing a whole feed full of people who are all watching the fireworks, and then there's that one person who's just never off the clock, and they're like, 10 tips for Facebook success. And you're like, really? Seriously, go like hug your kid and just like look at the sky. So I think that we are not indicative of the general public when it comes to this topic.
No.
I think with that statement, Jen, you win the statement of the week. That was by far the statement of the show.
I agree.
That was awesome. I loved that. That was really good. Go hug your kid. I love it. Well, with that closes another episode. Did you have something to follow up with?
Well, all I was going to say is that my wife shocked me this morning and said that she had deleted the Facebook app off of her phone.
Wow.
Because she was on it all the time. So
I think that's a growing trend, and we're going to talk about that in the future. I think we're going to see things change in the next 6-8 months. But that closes episode number 9, and I want to thank this panel again. Greg could not be with us. He was out of the country. and actually was in a place where there was no way he could get any kind of connection. So he will be joining us again in 2 weeks. And I want to thank you all again for being a part of the show, and this has really been fun, and let's keep moving forward with it. Good night, you guys.
Good night.
See ya.